Welcome to the EASE Workshop series. This PowerPoint goes over strategies on how to read scientific papers. If you want to follow along with the assessment, every time you see a yellow star, it's referring to an assessment question. You can find the assessment on the EASE website. Before we can get too far on scientific reading, we need to first establish what a scientific article is. It presents research results either firsthand or in a review format. Scientific articles are written by scholars or researchers, and they are aimed at an academic readership, meaning it is technically written and must go through the peer review process. Here is the basic peer review process. Once you have written up your manuscript, you submit it to a journal of your choice, one that fits well with your research and the angle you took with your paper. The editor will scan it for technical errors and send it out to 3 to 4 reviewers within your field of study. They report back to the editor with their comments and suggestions for publication, which include a focus on the quality of the research and any inaccuracies that they may find. The editor has the final decision if the paper should be published. Responses from the editor include rejected, which leaves the researcher empty and without hope for some time. Reasons for straight-up rejections are usually flaws in the research or inappropriateness of the study for the chosen journal. Rejected but encouraged to resubmit gives a hint of hope that there is something there, followed by major revision and minor revision, which can lead to the acceptance of the manuscript that makes the scientist full of joy. But keep in mind that just because it's printed does not guarantee it's valid. The peer review process helps eliminate blatant issues, but the knowledge base of the reviewers and the technology or understanding of the topic at a particular time plays a role. You can find scientific articles in the following sources: the physical library from your school or neighborhood, web searches either through a Google type search or through an article database, reliable scientific journals, reference lists from articles you've already read, the popular press like magazines, the newspaper, but be careful with these ones and make sure to look at the original source. And then, often overlooked, personal networks are also important to find scientific information. A benefit of using an article database is that you can move forward and backwards in time, so you can see which citations a paper has or who has cited that paper. You can also save these references to EndNote Web, which has a Cite While You Type plugin. And if you're lucky enough to be a UNM student, it is also free for you. Whether your goal is just to gain information for fun, find background articles for your own writing, or writing your own paper, the following methods on how to understand an article are important. The more you read, the easier it will be to write. To start off, make sure you are not trying to read the article like it's a novel or a newspaper. There is way too much information. It is much too dense for this. You can focus on which aspect of the article you are interested in, since you can have different reasons for reading each article. You may also have to go back and forth within the article while you're reading it. Be aware that you'll have to read the article at least 2 times, probably more. And remember to be patient with yourself. It takes time to become comfortable reading scientific articles. Also, like everything in life, the more you practice, the better you will become. Accept that you won't understand everything. Nobody understands everything they read in an article, but you can work on this. The next time you read an article, make sure to circle the words you don't know so you can go back and look them up before you read the article for the second time. This will help you fully understand the paper, and it is okay to use other resources to help increase your understanding. This can include textbooks, the internet, dictionaries, your network. Also, you are not alone. Most people often feel lost and substandard when reading manuscripts. To quickly refresh your memory of the general structure of primary research articles, the order of the many topics depends on the article. There are also sometimes supplementary information that is available online. The introduction contains background information about the topic. It sets the stage for the questions addressed by the authors and the main question asked. The methods are usually very technical and detailed. They show how the study was conducted. The results are the meat of the article, the data from the methods, including figures and tables. Generally, the data are stated, but not interpreted at this point. And then the discussion and conclusion are the author's interpretations of the results and what questions remain unanswered. There's also the abstract, which is a summary of the paper that includes the why, how, and what of the article. And lastly, the references, which provide enough information of the cited work to allow for you to find the original papers. As you become an experienced reader, you will find that you can use more targeted approaches. For example, you may decide to read the introduction first and then the results, or you may decide to read the materials and methods and go to the references just to check maybe a specific assay. You may also decide to look at the results and then at the materials and methods, or go over the abstract and the discussion just to get a snapshot of what's happening with the paper. The point I want to make is that you can ultimately develop your own targeted approach to reading a manuscript. For the purposes of this workshop, we will go over a method for unexperienced or lightly experienced readers. Keep in mind, many of the aspects of tackling reading an article can directly translate into writing an article. It's all about having a plan of attack. Start off by reading the introduction. This is the easiest part and gives good background information. It also puts the current research into perspective. As you read it, ask yourself not, what is the paper about? But, what problems are the researchers addressing? This helps you focus your thoughts as you read the rest of the paper. And how? What approach are they using to answer these questions? When you are done, summarize the background in 5 sentences or less. This helps you understand why this research is being done, thus increasing your understanding as you read the rest of the paper. Then, go back and skim the references cited in the introduction, especially those that are connected to the points that are of interest to you. This can help you find additional articles or main points to cite in your own paper. The next phase is to understand how they did their study, at least in a general sense. Start by looking at the figures and tables, even if you don't understand them right away. It will help you when you read about them in the paper. Read only the beginning and ending of the discussion. The first and the last paragraphs get to the quick and dirty of the actual research. The third phase is when you actually read through the entire article. Start by refreshing your memory on the introduction. Next, you only need to skim the methods. Make sure to identify the basic methods and only spend a lot of time on parts of this that are relevant to how you might approach your own research. Read the results and then the entire discussion. Go back through your figures and tables now that you've read the whole article. Finish by reading the abstract. Do this last so that you are not biased while reading the paper. It makes it easier to question their clarity, approach, interpretation, and conclusion. Think about it this way. When the idea is implanted in your mind, you may think the conclusions are yours, but they are really being driven by that implanted thought. Do not let the author's interpretation influence your thought process. The last phase will help increase your understanding of the article. Reread it at least once more, possibly more if necessary. Look through the references for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that you can check or follow up points made in the paper, and 2, you can gain a deeper understanding of a cited concept or related papers. And it's okay if it initially takes some time because, as you can see by the image, it is not a foreign thing to not understand a paper and possibly spend a whole day, if not more, going over it. And lastly, reread the abstract so that you can see if the authors did what they're actually stating in the abstract. As you read through your paper, mark it up along all the phases, highlight, question, put your thoughts, your notes, look up unknown words or concepts. It is the author's job to convince you that their question methods and conclusions are sound. So let's take this example and practice how you could mark it up. I want you to read this paragraph, and as you do, what questions come to mind? Pause the video to take some time to do this. So let's go over it. Rett syndrome is a childhood neurodevelopmental disorder and one of the most common causes of mental retardation in females. In females. Is it related to a gene on the X chromosome? With an incidence of 1 in 10,000 to 15,000. How common is that? Rett syndrome patients are characterized by a period of normal growth and development, 6 to 18 months, followed by regression with loss of speech and purposeful hand use. What happens? Triggers or activation in late infancy. Patients also develop seizures, autism, and ataxia. After initial regression, the condition stabilizes and patients survive into adulthood. Studies of familial cases provided evidence that Rett is caused by X-linked dominant mutations in a gene subject to X chromosome inactivation. Recently, a number of mutations in the gene encoding the methyl CpG binding transcriptional repressor, MECP2, have been associated with Rett syndrome. So, is MECP2 the probable cause of Rett? What is known about that? And then you can actually go and look at the literature cited. When it comes to interpreting the results of the paper, try to summarize them. Don't try to decide what they mean, just what they are. This includes the captions. Pay close attention to the use of the words significant and non-significant. That means there should be a statistical support for those conclusions. Related to this are the error bars or standard deviations of their graphs or values. The error bars help you see if there is actual significance to the data. If you have these 2 points on a graph, would you say they are different? Probably, but now, if you add the error bars, which could represent standard deviation, would you still say they are different? No, because there is an overlap in range of values within the dataset. Also, pay attention to the sample size. Is the sample size sufficient for answering their question or drawing the conclusions? Each result should go to lend support to the main questions of the paper. Are the questions answered? What do you think the results mean? You may change your mind as you read the author's interpretation in the discussion, but it's good to try to formulate your own conclusions as best you can before reading what they concluded. Let's practice looking at this table. What can you say about it? What is the standard deviation? Was the sample size sufficient? What do you think this means? Tables and figures should be able to stand alone without needing to reference the body of the text. So this table is providing information about effectiveness of vaccines. We can see that all the results are statistically significant between the 2 groups, vaccinated and placebo, as indicated by the p-value. Okay, let's try one more. Try to interpret or summarize the figures shown. So what this figure is showing is that while the number of frost days decrease, the number of exotic species seem to be increasing. And I was just able to get those conclusions from the screenshot shown. When reading that discussion, keep in mind that it is what the author thinks the results mean. Science is a learning process, and we never know anything with 100% certainty, but we can see what is highly supported. As you read it, ask yourself if you agree with the interpretations and see if you came up with alternative reasons for the results. It's important to address your weakness or limitations head on. Did the authors do this? Did you catch any weakness in their study? And lastly, since science is ever changing, there is always a next step. Do you agree? Can you think of anything else? We are close to the end of our workshop, but before we finish, I recommend reading How to Seriously Read a Scientific Paper, and it consists of a large number of quotes of different scientists providing their method of approaching a scientific article. And you will find that it's really personal, and there is a type of targeted approach depending on each person. And so, with that said, I wish you luck in your future endeavors when it comes to reading scientific articles. Please take some time to answer this survey for this workshop. We do value your feedback and we may change this accordingly. Thank you for listening.